Now that it appears likely that the government will face a partial shutdown by midnight, some are asking, what does that mean? What kind of impact will it have on both the government and the United States? Well, according to The Hill, shutting down the government would force thousands of federal employees to work without pay, and that includes agencies like the Secret Service, Transit Security, and Border Patrol agents. So they would have to work without pay. In some cases, government employees would be furloughed, or they could get back pay once the government is back in operation. But what's interesting is hearing from GOP lawmakers and representatives who think that this is no big deal. In fact, let me give you a statement from Representative Mark Meadows from North Carolina. He says it's actually part of what you do when you sign up for any public service position. It's not lost on me in terms of the potential hardship. At the same time, they know that they would be required to work.
Hold on, let's just be clear about a couple of things. First of all, it apparently is lost on you in terms of potential hardship because you just said, what's the big deal? That's what they signed up for. Second of all, let's note that lawmakers will not be subject to the pay freeze. So they will continue to get paid, and they are among the laziest people in America. To be fair, they do work really hard on the phones raising money for their campaigns. But they barely work to begin with. This J.R. Jackson, our producer, it's one of his pet peeves. They're barely ever in town, and whenever you bring them back in town, they're always outraged. But while they make everybody freeze their salaries, the congressmen will continue to get paid.
The problem with this is it's just a continuation of what I call the sports centerization of politics. That to the people who are leading the game, it's like a video game. And they don't think about the real life consequences. In the case here of the workers who will be furloughed, who won't get pay in time for Christmas, and even more broadly of the Americans who are going to be affected in an economy that will be hurt by all of this political uncertainty. And let's be real, Democrats have shut the government down before as well. And I don't think it's a good idea when we have Democratic presidents. I don't think it's a good idea when we have Republican presidents. We need to get out of this video game approach to politics and understand what's really at stake.
So I like that you mentioned the video game nature of politics, because it's not just true of our lawmakers, it's true of our electorate as well. And if you look at various policies and you poll Americans in a way where you don't let them know about the party influences behind the policy, they have completely different views. So we just did a story this week about the Green New Deal. And the vast majority of people, both Democrats and Republicans who were polled on the policy, were in favor of the policy. But the researchers had to make sure to take out anything that indicated that it was a left-leaning policy. Otherwise, the voters or the respondents would probably react differently, especially Republicans. So, and by the way, you can reverse it when it comes to a GOP policy, and Democrats are asked what they think about it. If they know that it's a GOP, a policy that the GOP is pushing, Democrats are less likely to be in favor of it. So look, it has a lot to do with our lawmakers, but our voters need to wake up, do what's right for the country as opposed to your political party.
Yeah, look, we're not calling things even like the mainstream media, but and the Republicans have shut down the government far more than Democrats have, and the Democrats usually are the first to buckle and reopen it and giving in to Republican demands. But right now, the Democrats are in the middle of doing what Anna and Joe were just talking about, which is Trump is saying, I'm going to withdraw troops from Syria, Afghanistan, et cetera. And Democrats are like, no, what do you mean no? We've been in favor of withdrawing those troops for all this time. All of a sudden, because Trump's doing it, we're going to be against it? That makes no sense. But let's go back to these monsters here on their absolute callous nature of how they're dealing with this shutdown.
So if Mark Meadows wasn't enough to infuriate you, let's hear from Representative Scott Perry. He's a Republican from Pennsylvania. And Scott Perry, who currently represents about 10,000 federal employees in Pennsylvania's 4th Congressional District, says that he's not worried about a government shutdown. He says the following: who's living that they're not going to make it to the next paycheck?
Oh, half of Americans maybe?
Right, yeah. Well, but that's the thing. Like, so here's a guy who has $500,000 in assets, right? Which actually is not that much compared to some of our other lawmakers, but still, he's good, he's chilling. He doesn't have to worry about not collecting his paycheck in response to a government shutdown. But then he has the audacity to turn to people, many of whom are his own constituents, and say, well, what kind of way are you living where you're living paycheck to paycheck? Let me give you the numbers real quick and then we'll jump in. Thousands of Pennsylvanians work in the federal jobs that pay less than $44,000 annually. The bottom 20% of American households have an average savings of less than $8,750, meaning for many, going without a paycheck or two could actually present real financial hardship.
That way understates it.
Yes.
I was going to look up the number of Americans that would be, basically wiped out by a $400 loss. But Joe's on the show, so I didn't. Joe already knows it.
Thanks. Well, 1 of 2 Americans couldn't afford a $400 surprise expense without going into debt. 3 of 4 Americans couldn't afford a $700 surprise expense without going into debt. So we're talking about 3 of 4 Americans who are a few blown tires in their car, a broken wrist, a busted pipe in their apartment away from financial crisis. So as you say, this is audacious. It's also the height of ignorance. This is America. A majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, which is why this whole attitude from the Republicans is so offensive and, again, incredibly ignorant.
Right, they're so out of touch. It's amazing. Like they don't even know like the struggles of their own constituents. They don't care about the struggles of their own constituents.
Perry has also expressed his opposition to a federal minimum wage.
Of course.
Saying basically, well, it's okay, you could just get a higher paying job. Oh, is that right, Congressman? Is that how it works? We just show up and they go, I would now like an executive job. Yeah, that's the ticket. That's what I'd like, right?
Cenk, I came up with a brainstorm on the minimum wage.
Yeah.
This is what I think we should do for members of Congress who don't support a federal minimum wage. We should have their salaries set by a vote of their constituents.
Oh, wait a minute.
Let the market set the salaries, right?
Yeah, that's right. Free market, baby. Because in the case of the congressmen, their employers is us,
right?
Yeah.
Right, and so as their employers, we would get to set the wages. So let's do a ballot referendum. Do you want to do that? My guess is if you set it at minimum wage, which would be excellent, and they would be in a cold sweat panic, and the voters would probably love it. My guess is that the minimum wage would start to go up dramatically. Right, whereas in this case, Perry makes $174,000. As Anna pointed out, the politicians' salaries are the only ones that don't stop. All other government workers, but these politicians keep getting paid. So he's like, oh, what's the big deal about missing a paycheck or two? I mean, if you don't vote against that guy, what are you doing? I mean, why don't you just say, okay, yeah, just come in here and punch me in the face, take money out of my pocket, and I'll still vote for you. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.